Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Thank God it's 1 day or 2 days away, or actually 3 days away, because I think I've said it many a time. The day before Thanksgiving to the day after New Year's, give me a time machine and let me fast forward through the friggin' crap, because I just want to get through it and get back to the regular stuff. Just like Monday through Friday.
The joy of regular living, not with people hustling and bustling and cutting you off. And I get it.
Right. And to throw in 2 snowpocalypses within the span of 6 weeks. I mean, it's just been utter friggin' misery. So yeah, get me to like minus temperatures, but just regular Monday through Friday drudgery, and that's perfect with me. Fine. All right, let's start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So let's talk about the Carlos Correa situation, because still no word on it. We saw a little bit on the Post where they said, looks like maybe, at the halfway point of that deal, there could be an out in the 6 years. I don't know. If I'm the Mets, why am I paying him the same AAV knowing that there's potential trouble in the future? Why am I even going 6 years? Like, I pointed that out on sportsology.com. Like, why am I even going 6? But if I'm going 6, why am I paying the same AAV I was before? Like, I think these are all the holdups for this deal. And so right now, there's no deal. Remember how happy I was?
Well, I mean, it's a weird situation, because obviously the Mets went into it with their eyes wide open, because obviously the Giants walked away from it for a reason.
Yeah.
So they walked away from it for a reason. They agreed to a deal. Now, obviously, it's pending a physical. It's always pending a physical. And then they saw the particulars of what was going on with, I think it's his ankle. And, they have the right to say, okay, we didn't know it was this bad. Let's see. But I mean, if one team walks away from a 13-year deal, another team walks away from a 12-year deal, it's a slippery slope. Like, you're going to get an 11-year deal from someplace else. No, it's probably going to be a shorter term deal, and you're just going to have to take it. And if you don't take it, then, go and play in the Cuban League.
Right. So a bigger story, what is possibly the biggest story in New York, is brewing. It brewed either last year or the year before, and it's brewing a little worse now. And that is the status of Keith Hernandez calling Met games, because even Yankee fans would agree the Mets should not lose Keith Hernandez on that broadcast at all costs.
No, I mean, I don't watch many Mets games, but I do like, Howie and Ron and Keith Hernandez as a combo. They have a lot of fun in the booth. I mean, honestly, what I would love is for the Yankees to steal Hernandez away from the Mets. That's not going to happen, because he has no affiliation to the Yankees. He's a former Met great, and I think a Hall of Famer.
Although Tom Seaver didn't either, and he did a good job with Florida.
And that's the thing. Keith has a great personality.
He could do it.
Yeah, I mean, imagine him and Cone and O'Neill and Mike in the booth. I mean,
that would be really good.
Yeah, but
the situation is such that for some reason, talks have stalled with he and SNY, and they'll pick up again after New Year's. But it's like, are they really nickel and diming Keith Hernandez? Like, at this point,
come on, Steve.
It's not Steve, though. He doesn't own SNY.
Oh.
Remember? I'm going to look up the ownership. I'm pretty sure the Wilpons own SNY still.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
In the end, the cheapness of
Sterling Enterprises. So that's still the Wilpons. So this is the Wilpons nickel and diming Keith Hernandez as a way to get back Met fans? I don't know.
He's going to end up at yes.
I mean, but this is, they're going
to trade him to ESPN.
Issue.
They're going to trade him to ESPN for A-Rod.
Yeah. Because I remember Cohen was looking into buying SMY and didn't.
Well, he should. I mean, he should. I mean, that's terrible. But anyway. All right, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, December 30th, 2022.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and I promise that on Monday I will remember it's 2023, unlike somebody else. And this is the HockeyBuzzcast.com. Okay, let's start with some of the games last night. And we want to get into some chatter out there and some of the rumors that are starting to pop up. And nowhere better to start than the Tampa Bay Lightning versus the New York Rangers, which was the replay or the reunion of the Eastern Conference Final last year, and it didn't disappoint. And as you said, I didn't watch the whole game, Russ, but I sort of parachuted in at times because I was concentrating on that Leafs debacle that we'll talk about. And it was playoff hockey. It ended up 2-1 in a shootout. Very physical. But and we'll talk about the game first, but conspicuous by his absence was former first overall pick Alexis Lafrenière, who was healthy scratched from the lineup by Gerard Gallant. So let's start with the game.
Yeah.
It's now December 30th, turn of the year, and the Lightning are starting to turn it on.
Yeah, and that game, it seemed like the Rangers were preemptive. They were kind of like, okay, we are going to send a message in this game. And Jacob Trouba definitely did that. He was hitting more than usual. He hit Corey Perry in one sequence 3 or 4 times, downing him every time in front of the net. And Perry got up every time, but I could see Perry was just a little out of wind on the bench. And I think that was like, hey, if this happens again, you come in the crease in the playoffs, this is what's going to happen to you. Bogosian had to step it up, defend, physically, and he did. He's definitely much bigger than he used to be before. But again, he ran out of a little gas doing that. And, Sammy Blais all of a sudden was hitting. That's about all he can do right now, but that's fine. And Ben Harper now, they added a 6'6" defenseman who all of a sudden was getting in on it. So, again, I don't love this hockey because there is so much skill. But again, with these two teams, this really is the way to beat Tampa. If Tampa is going to be on their game, it really is the only way to beat them.
Ladies and gentlemen, now playing the role of Patrick Nemeth, Ben Harper.
Yeah.
It's like, come on. Ben Harper was in the Leaf organization and he was not an NHLer. So that's sort of a statement about, their bottom pairing and how they are going to need somebody before the deadline. But see, the thing is, and I said on Off the Post, the way to beat Tampa is to out physical them. And there are not many teams that can't. There are teams that might be able to match. Remember, they have Perry, they have Maroon, they have Bogosian. Hagel is a physical guy, but he's not big. He's more of a feisty guy. There are big players like Cernak and Hedman and Sergachev who can step up and play physically, but that's not really their game. Stamkos Kucherov is as cheap as they come. So they raise their level a certain bit in the playoffs. And this was a regular season game, and that stuff was going on. So that was definitely some message sending by Gallant and the Rangers. And, it went to a shootout, so it was basically a draw.
Yeah.
But I look at the overall situation when it comes to Tampa and them being able to play that game, and the Islanders can play that. I don't know if they don't have as much scoring, but they can play that, and they have equal goaltending or close to equal with Sorokin, and their defense is good. Maybe Pittsburgh can do that if everybody's healthy with their experience, but they're not overly physical. Boston definitely can do that. Maybe Carolina. And that's it. And who I'm excluding is Toronto. Toronto can't play. Toronto will have to out-finesse Tampa and fight through physicality. And that's a difficult task. But I'm still, if I'm predicting a first-round matchup between Toronto and Tampa, which right now it would be, I'm favoring Tampa because Tampa's got the championship pedigree, and Toronto has to prove to me that they can get past the first round. But
it's a harbinger of things to come. It really was one of those things where I think teams realized right now, this moment, they can't wait until like the trading deadline or even after the All-Star game to kind of turn it up. I think they're turning it up now based on the fact that if you look at the Metro and how tight things are, that's it. Like, that's why. Because again, both goalies were terrific, right? Shesterkin, you expect the matchup to be perfect with the two Russian goalies, but again, I mean, it was everything else too.
Yeah, we're 34, 35 games into the regular season, and already it's less than 50 games. So we're talking about more than half the season left, and teams are starting to sort of turn it into playoff mode, because this is when it happens. It happens sometimes before the All-Star break, or sometimes right around the All-Star break, but it's happening before the All-Star break. And
I'm going to look up one stat from that game. Just keep talking for 1 second. Thanks.
Yeah, and teams usually in the first 25 to 30 games freewheel a lot, and they can't do that. Now, I'll say this: teams that have done it in the past, like Toronto, like Edmonton. I mean, Edmonton has to do that because they have no other gear. They can't play in first gear because their defense is terrible and their goaltending is average. They have to play in fifth gear all the time with McDavid and Draisaitl playing with their hair on fire. Toronto, to their credit, has been able to show this year with improved goaltending, with better team defense, that they can play, say, in third gear and not have to score 6 goals a game to win. And that's encouraging in the aspect of them being able to succeed in the playoffs, but they still have to play a team that is multi-dimensional and multifaceted like Tampa, and they're just different.
So here's the stat. So Vasilevsky made 46 saves, Shesterkin 40. Now, we're always saying, hey, Tampa's defense not what it used to be. True. But the Rangers' defense isn't the best either. Also true. It's just better than Tampa's. But at the end of the day, you could see this game didn't matter. Defense wasn't going to matter. It was going to be about the physicality and the goaltenders, and they both have both.
Now, Lafrenière does not play in the game. No. That was conspicuous by that fact was conspicuous. And now all of a sudden, Russ, we're starting to hear, trade chatter regarding Lafrenière. I don't know how serious it is. I don't know if it's realistic. I don't know if it's just, the New York media and, like some of the other people that we know, they have their ear to the ground and ear to the wall, and if something is actually happening, they'll sniff it out. But I don't know. To me, if this is a philosophical difference between him and Gallant, I don't know who wins that. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah,
you really want to trade a guy who's a number 1 overall pick who has a lot of talent, trade him because his coach doesn't think he can play the style that he wants him to play?
I'm not sure. I think that is it. I think Gallant, for whatever reason, doesn't care about what Lafrenière could be if he actually got power play time. He is basing everything on his 5-on-5. And look, I mean, he was never going to be the best 5-on-5 guy. And there's plenty of other guys like that in the league. He has 17 points. Like, he's got 1 power play assist. Like, there's no power play time on the ice for him. This season, he has spent 26 minutes on the power play for the entire season. 26. I mean, what are they expecting? I don't know what they're expecting, but I can tell you this now. Now, all of a sudden, when the Blackhawks come calling for Patrick Kane, since Gallant is scratching Lafrenière, whether he and he's broken up the kid line again, I think he could be in that deal now. And I'm not telling you I advocate for that, because I do feel like Lafrenière somewhere else getting what he needs as far as ice time, line mates, opportunity. He'll do better. Will he do what people expect him to be for a number 1 pick? I don't know. But he's got a few years. It's not like this guy's, 25 years old.
Well, do you think that they're devaluing him based on the fact that they're scratching him?
I think they already devalued him. I think that stat that I just gave you now devalued him. So that's terrible asset management. That really is. Yeah, I mean, right now, and here's another thing. shorthanded time on the ice, he's got 4 seconds this whole year. Now, I'm not telling you he could be a great penalty killer, but what I am telling you is he could go out there at the end of penalty kill shifts and cause matchup problems. But they don't do that. So right now, it's a situation, like Esmir says, it reminds of Jack Hughes. It's a little bit like that. Now, I think Jack Hughes is better. I always did. But I do think you can get a lot more out of Lafrenière. And the fact that they're not, and now that, Kakko's getting to play with some of the better players, like Zibanejad, it's a bad sign for the kid. And I just feel like now he is expendable. And that's a massive trade chip because you and I both know we were going through it. Number one picks still in their original contracts don't get traded very often.
I went through it last night. I was interested in I went back to 2006. Eric Johnson, and there was an injury issue here.
The golf cart injury.
Yeah, and during his ELC, he got traded after the third year to Colorado.
Right.
So he got traded he was first overall in 2006, and he was traded to Colorado. And that was a pretty big deal. I'm trying to remember what exactly
it was a big deal.
Here it was Jay McClement and Eric Johnson and a first-round pick for Chris Stewart, Kevin Shattenkirk, and a number 2.
Yeah, Shattenkirk at that point.
Right, and Shattenkirk was, Shattenkirk had big offensive years, so it wasn't like the Kevin Shattenkirk of now. But if you go forward from that. Okay, 2007 was Kane, same team. 2008 was Stamkos, same team. Tavares signed a bridge deal after his ELC, stayed 5 more years with the Islanders before he signed as a free agent with the Leafs. 2010 is Taylor Hall. He signed the second year or the second contract with Edmonton, 6 years, and then was moved during that deal, so he doesn't. 2011 was Nathan McKinnon, or was Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, excuse me, and he's still with his original team. Now, not a superstar, but a really good player. 2012 is the infamous Nail Yakupov. That is, Yakupov, I believe, signed a bridge deal, and then they got rid of him.
Yeah, and look, Lafrenière is better than Yakupov already in most facets of the game. His goals, I remember Yakupov had the 1 year with like 13 goals. Lafrenière may not even get that this year unless he gets traded. But what I'm basically saying is start looking at the tea leaves here. As the Rangers got better and they got Fox and they got Panarin and all of a sudden the rebuild was over, they had these young assets, but they didn't go out of their way to really put them in positions to develop them long term. So now Kakko's not really where he should be. He's doing a little better, but he's not anywhere near where he should be. But maybe now he will be because he's going to get regular time. And, I think the Gallant systems helped him a little. K'Andre Miller has gone up and down, and he's finally really good. But everybody believes, even Ranger fans, that really wasn't player development. It was kind of like trial and error. Fox came in like a complete player. So there was no teaching Adam Fox anything. No. So it's like, honestly, their player development stinks if you really look at it.
Zibanejad was formed with Ottawa and then came in after the trade for and just going forward, McKinnon, same team. Ekblad, same team. McDavid, same team. Matthews, same team. Hischier, Hughes. I mean, also Rasmus Dahlin, like all these guys, they stayed through the ELC. They signed extensions, and they developed. And some of them, to a greater or lesser extent, they're all good players. Or great. Yakupov is the one exception, or franchise level stars. And Lafrenière is the first one that right now, since Yakupov, everything is in question. Now, can you say that his development was affected by the pandemic? Maybe you could say.
I mean, it's definitely a factor. I mean, but this is the same with Kakko. I mean, we're still talking about a number 2 pick, and he's not put up the numbers you would think he should. No way.
No. I mean.
So it's both of them. If you think about it, Braden Schneider, while still young, could definitely be playing better. But again, he was pressed into action. They're doing what they can with him at the NHL level. I don't think they're going out of their way in teaching him anything. And I think he has a lot of ability, more than he's able to show right now based on the role he's playing. So again, the development there stinks. Zach Jones, they gave up on.
Lundqvist, they traded.
Because they're like, we have too many guys, too many left-handed shots. Okay. I mean, but you start looking at all of these things, and I've been looking at it for a little while, and it's not a pretty picture. It's a good picture for the NHL level, and it's still good for years to come because they traded for young stars. But again, you have to be able to develop from within, and if they don't, they could get to a point where they are a playoff team every year, but they turn into the Blues after, the cup and just have these up and down years.
I mean, we know, Fox is young, but we know that right now the core group of the Rangers is essentially in their mid to late 20s.
Yeah, so, like Kreider,
Kreider, like Panarin, like Zibanejad, like Trocheck, who they signed as a free agent.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is, and you have Shesterkin, who's 26, I believe.
Yeah.
So you can ride Shesterkin and have that group be competitive for 3 or 4 years. But later on, you're going to need that young group, the Lafrenières and the Kakos and the Hedels and the Keandre Millers, to take over. And if they don't, then you're talking about a reset or a rebuild in 3 or 4 years. That's what St. Louis is going through right now. They're passing the baton from the generation of O'Reilly and Tarasenko. They let Pietrangelo leave via free agency. And what did they do? They signed Kyrou, they signed Thomas, and that's the new group. But those guys are taking over because they were developed. They were developed patiently. And with the Rangers, we just don't know. Right now, it doesn't look good in terms of those guys coming to, maturing to a level and being able to produce.
I mean, Brennan Othman, sure. Like he does look like he can in another year or two. So, that's your next best one. But I agree. And look, Johnny Red's like, hey, the Rangers have 2 cups in 82 years. The only thing I can say is, Johnny, you should have been around in the 20s. They won more often then.
Right. So moving off of that to some other games last night. Now, everybody was excited in Buffalo with the 6-3 win over the Red Wings. There was 19,000 people at the arena last night because everybody was so sick of sitting in their houses for a week that they were just dying to get out. And the Sabres are 4-0 with the hideous decapitated goat's head, black, red, and white jersey, which I think is ugly as sin, but they seem to like it. It
didn't matter. It didn't affect their offense.
No, Kyle Oposo, he was getting some 24-year-old juju when it came to, he scored 3 goals last night.
Yeah, when's the last time he did that? Wow.
Probably when he was with the Islanders. I don't think he's ever scored a hat trick with the Sabres.
Yeah.
But just about the Red Wings, I mean, the Sabres, we know they can score. They've got really good young defensemen. The big question mark is in goal. Luukkonen, I guess, played pretty decently last night, but I still have some questions about Comrie and him, and I don't think
he didn't play as well as Matt Murray, but we'll get to that.
Oh God, here we go. But the Red Wings, they come back from down 4-0 against Pittsburgh and win 5-4. And essentially, I think they used all their mojo in that game because they just didn't have it last night.
Yeah, and I can't kill Detroit. They used Magnus Hellberg. Like,
why? I mean, so one. I don't know if it's Nedeljkovic or it has to be Nedeljkovic because Husso, I think, played in the game against the Penguins.
Yeah, I mean, Magnus should be Thor's sidekick, not necessarily an NHL goalie. Like that's just that should be his place in life. But I'll tell you, the smile that I saw, though, Mike, that made me feel good was the 2 goals and the second one by Middlestat. He was having fun. And it's nice to see Casey Middlestat. Again, it took him a little longer because they rushed him. He wasn't at NHL strength. We get that. But you know what? He's finally at least becoming a decent player. That's all we're looking for at this point. And now we realized they damaged him to a degree, but he, at 24, hey, if he gets 35 points, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So
if he can get it.
Yeah. So Husso gave up 4 goals on 12 shots against Pittsburgh in the first period. They yanked him and they put Hellberg in, and Hellberg shut out the Penguins for the rest of the game. And then they came back and won the game. So I guess that playing in the second of back-to-back was a reward for winning the game against the Penguins the previous night. But Hellberg is basically a 4A goaltender. I would have gone back to
Hellberg played the whole game, Mike.
No. Against Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay, you did say against Pittsburgh. Then you lost me. Okay.
Yeah, against Pittsburgh, Hellberg shut them out the rest of the final 2 periods and the overtime, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And Jake Wallman scored the goal. So then against Buffalo, it was a reward for him being the guy who stopped the Penguins, and he didn't stop anything against the Sabres.
I'll tell you who's gotten hot, though. Elmer Soderblom has gotten hot, and I gave Kevin Allen the scoop on him a year ago when he wanted to know about him, and I said, listen, this is a big guy who can play around the net with great hands. He is not like a big bruiser, but he has a great amount of finesse and skill in his game, and he's got 7 points in 18 games. I mean, I'm not expecting a ton out of him, but he's got points in his last 5 games.
I mean, that's respectable. I'm just looking up who Middlestat, because I didn't watch the game last night.
Who he was on a line with?
Who he was on a line with? He was on a line with Paterka and Jack Quinn.
That's a good line.
That's a good line. A good young.
And he's the least talented on that line, but they're all fast.
And that's saying something because he's talented.
Yes, and they're all fast. Something else to point out is that 2 assists for Owen Power, so he's up to 12. He's a plus 11. I think that's noteworthy considering that Buffalo isn't the greatest defensive team.
And I think that was his first game back, coming back from injury. So
yeah,
he was for a little while. So
he's starting to put it into gear. He doesn't have an NHL goal yet. We're still waiting on that, but that's okay. I mean, I like the development on a lot of these guys. It's just I'm worried about in net, but that's a good game for Pekka Luukkonen. So maybe he'll put together some more of those, because that's it. Like, it's all riding on him. And so far he's got an 892 this year.
Yeah. Touching on some other games, Florida wins over the hapless Canadians 7-2. Barkov with a natural hat trick in the first period. Kachuk with a couple goals. Samuel Montembeault gives up, I believe, all 7.
No shot there.
The thing is, the Panthers, they still have, Barkov's having a really good year. Kachuk is having a really good year, and they're 16-4. So they can't play defense. They're not getting good goaltending. They're
not good.
They're not good. And I don't know if Bill Zito can correct this in season, because he has no cap room. He's got no draft picks to trade. I mean, it's really, they've cast their lot. I honestly think that the deal with Calgary was a mistake, not because they got Kachuk, because I think Kachuk is the best player in the deal, but Huberdeau and Uyghur were an integral part woven into the fabric of that organization. And the way they're playing right now, it's like they gutted the organization by trading them.
Yeah, going forward in 2023 on this show, we can't talk about Mackenzie Weegar anymore. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. He gets mentioned more than anybody on this show for the team that he's not even on anymore.
Right. Well,
all what you said is true, though.
But because his absence is his.
He's the Matt Niskanen of 2022.
Yeah, and Tony Soprano in the chat is right. Maurice may have been a mistake.
No, it's a mistake, and I may have been.
Yeah,
it's a mistake. Who did that song? Men.
It's a mistake. Men at Work.
Men at Work. Yeah, I knew it was Men at something. Yeah, I would play that song every time he's behind the bench, because it seems pretty obvious to me. And Tony Soprano should stop hawking Kudobin in the chat room. It's not going to happen.
Jump down the shelter. No, anyway, but now that song is buzzing in my head. The Senators beat the Capitals in overtime 4-3.
That's a good win, because the Caps have been playing well.
Yeah, Alex DeBrincat with 2 goals, and I did see Sean Simpson, our friend from TSN, mention about DeBrincat and the Sens signing him to an extension. Remember, I believe he's an RFA after this year, so they have one more year. They can qualify him and probably go to arbitration. But ideally, they want to get him signed to a long-term extension. But the question is whether he wants to stay in Ottawa and whether that is they locked up Norris, they locked up Stützle, they locked up Brady Tkachuk, they locked up Shabbat.
I don't see why he wouldn't. There's a good core there. I don't see why he wouldn't.
Unless it's an Ottawa thing. I mean, some players don't want to play in Canada. He's a U.S. kid. Some players, I mean, there's definitely opportunity there because they're throwing money around like it's going out of like it's Steve Cohen.
Yeah.
And which is,
we have to acknowledge one thing, even though in the loss, Darcy Kemper's having a very good season for the Capitals. I mentioned the other day, he's facing a lot of shots and 45, he had 45 shots on him yesterday. I mean, that's a lot of shots. Cam Talbot only faced 23.
Right.
So that's a big deal.
Charlie Lindgren has also played really well for them too.
He has. Charlie Lindgren's been really good. And there's this kid on Ottawa, Claude Giroux. He's got 31 points. I never heard of this guy, but he's got 31 points, 14 goals.
This unknown youngster. I mean, he's so unknown that Bobby Clark couldn't even remember his name. Come on.
No, but think about that for a minute. Like, Owen Tippett has 11 goals, okay? That's the most he's scored in his NHL career. Claude Giroux has more goals than him. He has a ton more points. He is the guy. I mean, so hopefully Tippett keeps doing better because I'm telling you, this trade for Ottawa just it killed the Flyers in a way, even though they probably had to do it because we all acknowledge that. But look at what they lost. What they lost is way greater than what they could ever get back.
Yeah, but the thing is Philadelphia a Claude Giroux away from being a playoff team? They're not.
No. And I get that. But they should have been closer to a Claude Giroux, what they could get back. And that whole situation just, never worked out.
Well, Giroux limited their options by saying he wanted to go to Florida.
He did to a degree, but then that's up to the GM to make a better deal.
Right.
Didn't it seem like Bill Zito picked out who they were going to trade him for?
Yeah, we were saying Denisenko or we were saying Lundell, and he was saying,
he was like, no, don't look at the Corvette in my garage, but you could look at
the Edsel.
Yeah,
and I shouldn't say that because Owen Tippett's having a bad year, but I'm saying they weren't looking at grade A prospects; they were looking at grade B prospects. They were looking at the Dell computer that was rebuilt after the hard drive was fried, and it's like, okay, no, how about a brand new computer?
Yeah.
The Islanders beat the Columbus Blue Jackets, who are battling Chicago for the top spot in
the skin of their teeth.
Yeah, but in the Bedard Cup. Sorokin with another great performance, only allowed one goal. But the Islanders, only 2 goals, Pajot and Barzal, and that was enough offense to get them the victory. But again, I say they are not a realistic contender in the East unless they get more offense. And I don't know whether they're going to or not, but that's my theory.
Yeah, I know I picked the Islanders out of it, but I think I picked the Penguins. Oh, I know who my other team was because on the air when Mick said, I was just on with Mick Kern, he said, I didn't pick the Capitals. And I said, yeah, I don't think I did either. But it wasn't them. I picked Columbus. That was my my other team. But I think I picked the Penguins over the Caps too. But I didn't. No, Caps, yes. Islanders were out. I had the Islanders out for sure. And they're on the edge. Like for all the, talk about the Islanders, they're tied with the Rangers. I get it. But I still think if I'm going to pick either one of them, if it's going to come down to those two, I'm going to pick the Rangers. But in the 3, the Islanders are certainly well in the race. But again, the Penguins have better underlying numbers than the Islanders. The Islanders may have the better differential, but it's just
the advantage that the Islanders have is they have top echelon goaltending and Pittsburgh doesn't.
Yes. That is their one edge.
I like Jari. I think he's a good goaltender, but he's not a great goaltender. And I like the Islanders defense as much as I like, or maybe even more than Pittsburgh. And there's no contest in terms of their offenses because they have Crosby and Malkin and Gensel and Rust, and you can go down the line. And the Islanders have, I think, 4 really good offensive forwards, and then the rest of the guys are sort of muckers and grinders.
Now the Islanders do have 2 more points than the Rangers. We'll point that out, goals, and they're tied with the Penguins for goals. But still, for whatever reason, and the way the games shake out, maybe it's the way they win and sometimes how they lose as far as how goals are being scored, I still don't believe in it enough. Now, if they make the right trade, the Islanders could be right there. I mean, there's no question they are there. But they're a weird team. And Lane Lambert's not doing a bad job. Mm-hmm. But they're just a team that
he's working with what he has.
Yeah, he's working with what he has. But if the goaltending were to falter there even a little bit, right, that could be it for them. Like, that's the pressure that Sorokin has on him.
God forbid if Sorokin gets hurt or Varlamov gets hurt and they have to overplay Sorokin, then those are issues that are going to really hurt them. The Blues bounced back from the loss to the Leafs with a 3-1 win over Chicago. Chicago is 8-22-4, 20 points.
Just pathetic.
Pathetic, and they're going to get worse. And we'll talk about how they're going to get worse, which is they're going to trade Taves and Kane.
Why would you give that away, Mike?
Oh, gee, like shock.
What's wrong with you? By the way, they're not only pathetic, they have a .294 winning percentage.
That's pathetic. The Dallas Stars. Gee, you want to know why the Dallas Stars are successful this year? All encompassed in their 4-1 win over the Wild. Who scored the goals? Tyler Seguin with 2. Jamie Benn with 1. He's got 15 on the year. And Wyatt Johnson, 19 years old, who would have qualified for the World Juniors, has 11 goals.
Yeah. I mean, they've been able to get goals out of guys like that. But again, you look at Kiviranta, he was a darling a couple of years ago. Now his goals have dried up, right? So it is about just their system and what happens with other guys. I do want to give a shout out to Thomas Boyle out there in the chat room. We haven't seen him in a while. So nice to see Thomas Boyle back and talking. He hopefully heard what we said about the Islanders. He likes the way Tyler Wotherspoon is filled in for Adam Pelech. He thinks Pelech might be finished for the year. I haven't heard anything like that. But if that is the case, if that ever was the case, that's a big problem.
Then they're in trouble. Then they're not trading Scott Mayfield because they can't afford to.
So then that could change a lot of things for them. But
and they're probably wasting some of their assets to get a defenseman to maintain that that really tight defensive style. But I just have to say that like Kiviranta was the Chris Kontos of 2020. He was a playoff hero, and now he's just sort of blended back. Yeah, exactly. Like Tony Soprano said, he's more of a 4th line grinder. So that's essentially his role. The Jets beat the Canucks 4-2, hat trick for Mark Scheifele. He's got 22 on the year. They just seem to 23 on the year. They just seem to be hitting on all 8 cylinders with Bonus as the coach. Hellebuck with another good game. The Canucks, they're like the Panthers of the West, 16-16-3. Colin Delia playing in goal for so Demko. It must be Demko and I know Demko was hurt. Martin, they can't play him every game. Kings beat the Avalanche 5-4 in overtime. Avalanche are hurting right now. They're bleeding points right without McKinnon, without some of their other big guys. And, they need to get those guys back to sort of reestablish their dominance in the Central. But if they can hold on and just earn points here and there, when McKinnon's supposedly like a week away, then, they might be okay. But down the line, Russ, they're going to need a number 2 center. They're going to need some help at the deadline.
Yeah, they're going to need a number 2 center. It could be Ryan O'Reilly. We talked about Ryan O'Reilly and Off the Post, and everybody should listen to it later when I get around to posting it. But yeah, Ryan O'Reilly for them would be a good fit, Mike.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it would be a good fit in terms of the need. I'm saying it wouldn't be a good fit in terms of the history. And if it's just simply, I'm going to go where I'm traded, fine, if he's a professional in that respect. And I'm not saying that Ryan O'Reilly is not a professional, but you got to remember he signed an offer sheet to leave Colorado because it was perceived that Colorado was screwing him over. So do I think Joe Sakic would trade for him? No, I think they'd go for Horvat or somebody else like that instead of O'Reilly, because you're just opening up a whole new can of worms. I'm not saying he's going to Toronto. I think there are 4 or 5 teams that he could go to. But I think Toronto is one option, and I don't think Colorado is realistic. I just really don't. So one other game before we get to the Leafs one, the Flyers beat the hapless San Jose Sharks,
and they are hapless.
Yeah, 4-3 in overtime on an Anthony DeAngelo goal. Samuel Urson with the victory, but I mean honestly, the Sharks are just bad team right now.
They are. I mean, Carlson looked great though. That's the funny thing.
But Mike Greer is stuck here. It's like, okay, Carlson is healthy and he's playing great, but they're a team that is not competing for a playoff spot. And we've talked about it with Kevin on the Buzzcast. They're not going to get anything for him if they trade. I mean, what they'd be getting is cap space. That's all they'd get. They're not going to get like multiple first round picks or prospects or whatever. They're going to say, take them. You can take the entire 11.5. Maybe we have to retain salary, and whatever we save, we can use to sign younger players or whatever. But they're just in a bad situation.
Yeah, and Kevin LeBanc got really banged up last night too. So that wasn't good because apparently, I don't remember what happened at the end, how they took him off the ice, but it wasn't good.
Was it on a stretcher? Or?
He's expected to be fine. No, it wasn't a stretcher. Okay. Some guy named Shen Pang said he's going to be fine. So, all right. I don't know who this guy is, but
I've never heard of him.
But if he says it, I believe it. So that's good news but he had a nice goal in that game. The Flyers had a good comeback. Urson played pretty good. York was okay as a number 2. There was some good and bad, so we'll see over time how that works out. So I'm going to go off the script here before we go on to the Leafs game, and I want to mention that Henrik Lundqvist was in Frölunda the other day. I think they were retiring his number, right? So he shows up. His twin brother Joel is still playing, right? So they go over and hug, and Lundqvist looks like he's 10 years younger than the guy who's the same age as him.
Oh, they're twins?
Like Joel Lundqvist is playing, the other guy's retired, and the guy who's retired looks younger. It's so unbelievable. I'm so glad I'm not his brother because, you just can't live up to that. You can't match up to that. Also, I noticed on Lundqvist's Twitter feed that he's got a pair of game-used skates, game-worn. He's autographed them, and they've turned them into Swarovski crystal, Mike. It's unbelievable. It illuminates. It's on Christie's now, I think, for sale for charity, for his charity. But it's unbelievable. The story of Henrik Lundqvist, even in retirement, is amazing.
The legend continues.
It does.
That's great. He's Benjamin Button. He keeps getting.
He is.
And his brother.
Joel's getting older, and he's not.
The picture of Dorian Gray. The picture of Joel Lundqvist. Okay, as I vented just a bit on off the post, the Leafs once again lose to the hapless Arizona Coyotes. And maybe I shouldn't say hapless because they are 500 in the last 10 games, but I think I say hapless in the sense that their goal is to lose. They have as bad a roster as you can get, and they're winning because Vejmelka is playing good, and they have a couple good players who are carrying the weight on their shoulders. But this is not on the Coyotes. The Coyotes, their job is to try. The players aren't going to lay down. This issue is with the Leafs. The Leafs have they've lost. They got swept in the season series with the Coyotes last year, and now this year they got swept in regulation 2 games. And I know you're jabbing about Matt Murray.
Jabbing? I mean, he was in for 5 goals.
No, he was in for 4 goals.
Oh, 4. Oh, sorry.
And 2 are empty nets. And you know what? I said, I think he was not at fault for at least 2 of them and maybe 3 of them. The only one I think was a bad goal was the third goal. That was the JJ Moser power play goal that tied the game. But that's the thing. It's like he didn't make the big save to, keep them tied. But he didn't. I mean, they weren't exactly like, goals that he should have stopped that I can blame him for. This was on the core group, and this is on the team in general, where for some reason. I don't know that this is the same thing with when they played Buffalo, at least until last year. Now they seem to have their dander up when they played the Sabres earlier this year. They seem to have this lackadaisical approach when it comes to playing Arizona.
Wait, hold on. I have a headline to read you, Mike.
Yeah.
Damian Cox, the return of Leafs goalie problems. Doubt trickles in after shaky stretch from Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov. There you go.
Yes. I don't know who that guy is. No, I did say like on the Buzzcast, and actually I talked about this on Leaf Talk, the show that I host after the game sometimes. If you look at the statistical breakdown of Ilya Samsonov through his NHL career, his save percentage in October, November, and December is north of 910. His save percentage in January, February, March, and April is under 900. So that's where, and that might be fatigue. That might be basically mental concentration. I mean, we'll see. Now, Murray, the concern with Murray is not, ability. It's whether he's hurt. And he was supposed to start the first game against St. Louis coming out of the break, and he didn't. And there was some whisper that, maybe he's got a little twinge or something like that. But I don't think he played like he was injured last night. I think the team just didn't play well. And what I said was the core group last night, the group that they rely on, was -12. The core four. They were, Austin Matthews and Nylander were -4. Marner and Tavares were -2. I mean, plus minus isn't the end all or be all, but when you're on the ice for 4 to 6 goals, that's a problem. So I just, for some reason,
are you giving the goalie tandem the vote of confidence going into the new year?
No, because a vote of confidence would basically be a wink, wink, nudge, nudge that I'm not confident. No, I'm confident in their. I think they're a good tandem.
Just so everybody knows, you're hearing it. Look at Vepsis showed up for this one. What time is it there? Like 4 a.m.? Like, who knows?
No, they're 6 hours ahead. So
okay.
It's 7:52. It's 8 o'clock.
All right.
Yeah. So Vepsis is having I won't say this.
I'm sure Vepsis understands that Matt Murray did not have a good game yesterday. I'm sure he gets it.
I won't say this for Vepsis because I don't know. We talk to him all the time, but but Finnish people that we do know at 8 o'clock, they're drinking their 4th or 5th vodka. So, I won't name the Finnish people that we know, but most of them are doing that.
But was Austin Matthews on the golf course? I mean, he was a -4.
I just said that. Is there an echo in here?
No, but I do wonder.
You're saying it for emphasis. That's what you're doing.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to touch on the World Junior and the little game that I advertised on the blog. But so yesterday, and I'll just reiterate. I'll say it one line sentence. I think that the goal differential thing in the World Junior is a joke. It forces teams like Canada to drub teams that are not as talented as them, like Germany and Austria. They scored 22 goals in 2 games, and I think it's sickening. Okay, they're better than them, beat them. That's fine, but the goal differential should be capped to prevent teams having to destroy other teams. It's sort of a mercy rule. Like, okay, score 20 goals if you want to, but goal differential is 6 or 7, and that's
I don't disagree with you, but I think for the people in attendance, if they start playing Princeton offense and just passing the puck around, they're going to be bored. Canadians don't get bored about how many goals Connor Bedard puts in. Let's be real. Now, he may pass Peter Forsberg for the all-time record. He might. But again, without Russia, there's some really inferior teams in this tournament that we have to acknowledge too. That's not to take away from what Bedard can do, but it can take away from what Bedard can do to pile on. And it's not his fault. Like, I don't blame him for scoring, but there is something to be said about that. Like, I'm not going to go crazy if and when he passes Forsberg. So But hey, 14 goals. It's amazing. Like, no matter what you say, he's been great. He's lived up to expectations. I do think there's other players. I mean, again, you got to remember how young Adam Fantilli is. Like, it's, he is not only a 17-year-old freshman in college, but he went early. He actually is one of those guys that's actually like a year and a half young for college because he has an October birthday. So this guy is playing, and he just got his first goal, but he's playing pretty well for a guy of that age. You got to just remember how young he is calendar-wise. Hey, those are the top two guys. Leo Carlsson has proved that enough to me that he is the third guy. And then after that, then that's when we start having a conversation. And that's what's the fun part about the draft. Like it was pointed out to us by Craig Button, he doesn't ever remember a 1-2-3 playing in the that could happen in the draft, playing in the World Juniors like this. And I don't either. And it's been fun. Like, it's just so there's a lot of positives. Yes, Tyler Boucher has looked good for the USA. Now, what I would say about this, and it's not to upset Senators fans because I like Tyler Boucher, is he going to score those goals that way going forward? I don't know. And that's where we're going to find out what Tyler Boucher is down the line. Now, ultimately, he's always going to be a kid who is good speed, good size, strong. So he's going to have a place in the NHL. I just don't know if he's a Kachuk. He's at that level. I don't think he is. And so that's where, there was a little bit of doubt where he got drafted in the slot that he did. But Ottawa, this is, again, when you ask me, do players get sometimes drafted out of need? I will tell you yes. And this was one of those picks. And there's more of them that have been happening in my eyes in the last few years, but this was definitely one of them.
So the U.S. beat Switzerland, the game that they needed to win. They're 2-1. Canada, after losing to Czechia, have won 2 straight. They're 2-1. If you look right now the U.S. play Finland, Canada plays Sweden in the last game of the round robin. If the standings stay current, the way they are right now, the flip flop in the divisions, it's Canada U.S. in the quarterfinals,
and nobody wants that. Nobody from a playing standpoint, nobody from a TV standpoint, but it could happen. I mean, maybe does Sweden upset Canada on New Year's Eve? I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. If U.S. loses to Finland and Canada loses to Sweden, I don't think Canada stays in second place in that division. So
right.
I don't think it's possible for Canada and the U.S. to face each other in the quarterfinals based on win-loss either side. But I'm just saying right now that's the way it lines up, and I don't think either side wants that to happen. So
no, some other guys like Funky said, Dylan Gunther looks great. Right now, I'm currently leading my World Junior Fantasy pool. I have Dylan Gunther, I have Bedard, I have Clark. I have some good.
And nobody you're leading it, so shut
right.
up.
But I have some good players.
Yes.
My goaltending has not been what I thought it would be because I have Mberico, and I will tell you he is better than Augustine. He definitely can make the bigger save, but they're going safe right now with the U.S. in net, and we'll see.
He's lost to Slovakia, so he won't get a chance again.
I know, but it wasn't his fault. Slovakia was destroying them.
Yeah, I'm not saying
just destroyed them on a total lack of everything. I did also, just want to point out that this tournament, again, has proven one thing to me. As much as I love Simon Nemec as a player, you can't tell me that he's the better player over Logan Cooley or over David Jiricek. If you think he is, type in now, call in now. Because if you're watching those guys, and Nemec too, I mean, Jiricek is really coming on strong. And especially as a scorer, as a defenseman who could score. And then Cooley is just doing everything. Again, New Jersey passed on a guy, second overall, Logan Cooley, who could be a top-line center in the NHL someday. A top-line center. So Nemec is going to have to be a star, or it's going to be easy to second-guess that draft pick. It really is. I get it. They were loaded with centers. But you see Logan Cooley as well as I do, Mike. It's pretty impressive.
You could have moved Hischier to the wing.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually.
I made that point, a couple times pre-draft. Like, you could do that. But they didn't do it. if they want to tell me that was their best player available, okay. But I'm just going to tell you that is one that could get second guessed for a long time.
Yeah. All right. We'll hold off on the percentage prediction until
Monday. We can answer a couple questions and that's it.
Yeah, we'll answer a couple questions here about it. Throw them around in the chat. I'll just say that New Year's, like I said, I'm looking forward to Sunday and Monday, New Year's Day, the day after New Year's, where we get back to normal. Also the thing is, it's like the NFL schedule has been all sort of jumbled because of what's going on the holidays and the weather.
And it's screwing up the Winter Classic because now the Winter Classic's on Monday instead of Sunday. So it's not New Year's Day. It's the day after. It's the second.
And it's Monday in the afternoon. And probably the best game of the NFL schedule this weekend is the Monday night game, which is Buffalo-Cincinnati.
It'll be over before then, though.
Yeah. I mean, that good because I want to watch the Winter Classic and then I'll obviously watch Buffalo-Cincinnati. So, it'll be interesting. Any questions in the chat, put them in there before we end the show. But yeah, no, that's that. But I'll just say that, and I'll go into more detail just because I joked about it on Off the Post. I like my New Year's Eve tradition. He's either there's all the World Junior games. There's Leafs Colorado. So I don't have a party to go to. Most of the friends who usually have parties are out of town or going to other people's parties. So I'm gonna order some food, watch some hockey, and have a nice glass of bubbly or whatever at midnight. But I normally either get pizza or Chinese food, and the Chinese place that I like is in Fort Erie. So I'm probably the only person out there who goes to another country to get Chinese food.
You are the only person.
Yes. Funky. Okay. I won't say what you said in the chat, but because I don't think he's annoying, but Funky is asking about Mike Johnson doing the World Junior coverage. And I'll just say this. I do miss Ray Ferraro, not because Mike Johnson is bad, but because I like Ray Ferraro.
I think that's a fair point. Ray Ferraro is hard. Those are hard shoes to fill, big shoes to fill. No question about it. I mean, that's a big deal. As far as, I'm really excited about the Winter Classic. I always am. That'll be fun.
For a first game in Buffalo, would you recommend seeing Rangers, Devils, or Red? Well, it depends on if you're a Sabres fan. If you're a Sabres fan, I would choose the Red Wings because they'll win that game more than likely. If it's the Rangers or Devils, if you're looking for a good game, I'd probably say the Devils. That'll be a wide opener. Rangers will shut them down, and Shesterkin will limit their offensive ability. So I would say Devils or Red Wings, depending on.
I'm telling you, I would do Devils. Watch Jack Hughes. Let the dice fall where they may as far as your team winning or losing. Just watch Jack Hughes. It's worth it. That's what I would do. Mike, there's a good question for you out there.
Where is it?
Funky asked it.
Funky. I don't see it. Just read it off.
How does Chinese food mix with tang?
Oh, it's fantastic. Chinese food always mixes well with tang.
Oh, look, we got Jan for the next 2.5 minutes. Maybe we can stretch it to 5.
Yeah, Jan.
So come by to wish you guys a happy New Year. Don't give me snap.
You're so sweet. Okay.
That I should just hang up and tell you.
No, we're gonna use you.
Yeah.
No. We're gonna use you now.
Yeah, you're doing your best. I can see you're wearing your Walt Michaels hat here, or is that Rich?
I wish Walt Michaels had remained the coach and not Joe Walton. Let's put it that way. They would have.
Yeah, we all do.
So what is your read on Lafrenière as it currently stands? So do you think that we're on the road where he ends up being trade fodder at the deadline, or do you think this is a message and he's going to get back in the lineup?
I mean, I think it's a message. So kind of what I compare it to slightly is, on a lesser scale, Kakko gets scratched last year for the last game of the season, basically, right? And the cost level is, oh my God, he's going to ask for a trade out, right? It all depends on the mental fortitude of the player. Kakko came back and said, in essence, screw you. I'm going to show you. I'm going to come back with renewed vim and vigor and be ready for the season, which is kind of what happened. I think Lafrenière last year got scratched, and the next day he actually came back, I think, or 2 days later, scored 2 goals against the Flyers. I mean, The issues that exist with Lafrenière are, one, his skating, which was known before the draft, and two, is he a power forward or is he a guy who's going to play more on the perimeter? And I think he needs to determine that. On the first part of it, and I'm sure you guys got into it, development of prospects for the Rangers, especially when it comes to forwards, has been an issue for
we got into it.
35 years, right? And that's a system-wide issue that exists there. The lack of skating is something he should have worked on his own, and the team has done a piss-poor job in first around him to bring somebody around. I mean, Barbara Underhill worked with Brian Boyle years ago and made him into a passable to slightly above average skater, which resurrected his career, right? And they had hired somebody this offseason, Jessica, and I'll remember her last name, and then she ended up going to become an assistant coach in the AHL. That was going to be her job. You would think from an organizational perspective, hiring somebody to do that would be paramount. They just haven't done it yet. I think his play 5x5 has dropped off a little bit. There's no question. He wasn't as good as he was earlier in the year and during the beginning part of their win streak. I think
so. Jan, one thing, and then you definitely keep going. Just so you know, I looked up his total power play time for this year is 26 minutes. That's it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, he doesn't get power play time on ice. I mean, look, part of it is because they use the first unit substantively a lot. And honestly, there are issues there also because that unit has become so predictable of let's overload one side and get it to Zabinajad or Panarin for a one-timer, which is great if you hit the net. But when you miss 30 shots yesterday that don't hit the net, it's a big problem, right? So part of it is that I do look. I would if he gets scratched against Sunday, then I think it starts to become more of a story. Then I think you may start seeing some whispers of him being trade fodder or possibly on the block. I think would be a substantive mistake. Has he played as well as you would love a number one pick to be? No. Do I think he's a Nail Yakupov type of bust? No, I don't think that either. From given what we've seen, there's still talent there. It just hasn't come to the fore.
And he's 21. It's not like he's 24.
Right. He wasn't put on a first or second line when he first came up, remember, right? A lot of first round picks will get look, Hughes struggled, but he was seeing copious amount of ice time because the Devils were a bad team and then they could afford to do that. The Rangers luckily backed into him after having already gotten Panarin, signing him and ended up in kind of in playoff contention and losing in the bubble to Carolina, which was something that was completely unexpected. So, and look, do I think Gallant is necessarily the right coach for him? I'm not going to say that either. From what we've seen in the last years, I think honestly, look, Ranger fans.
He's not Ted Sater, but
Ranger fans didn't love David Quinn, but I do think Quinn actually probably would have been better for his development. And if you look back in the past, right, if you look at some of the comments made by JT Miller and Kevin Hayes to basically what either Torts or AV did to them, they recognize now that the tough love they got then did benefit them. Putting aside what's going on with Hayes and Torts right now in terms of it being a healthy scratch. But Miller will admit that the tough love he got didn't click in to several years later, but it benefited him, right? So I think Lafrenière will get back in the lineup. I don't know whether or not they'll reunite the kid line again. I do think you might see Lafrenière.
I don't think they're going to. I think Gallant's done with it, and I don't know why, but I think he's done with it.
Because I think he views it as a crutch as opposed to being able to develop the other guys, but they don't have other guys you can maybe put in the top six when it comes to the right side. If you don't put Kakko there and you don't put Lafrenière on his offside, which I don't think he's particularly better on his right side than his left side. I think he's much better suited to be a left winger as opposed to a right winger. So
agreed.
There's
just to answer the chat room, Jan, you can answer this too. They asked if he's a selfish player. He's not. He's done everything the Rangers have asked.
No, I don't think I've ever seen him being a selfish player. Look, I personally think Hito, Lafrenière, and Kakko work well together. I think they drive possession. I think Kravtsov, the way he played yesterday, being on that third line, had a very good game. You can move him up.
He's doing everything but scoring now. He does look really good in the play. He's cycling the puck well.
He needs to get bigger and stronger. He does need to get stronger.
Yeah, he's getting pushed around. No question.
Like Bogosian pushed him around yesterday, but I wouldn't say that Vitaly Kravtsov is the only guy that Zach Bogosian has ever pushed around. No. He does need to get a lot stronger on his skates a little bit, but the playmaking is the vision and the skill is there. You can get stronger. And look, you want to argue these guys should have gone to Hartford and played half a season in Hartford before they get called up. Won't disagree with you.
I wouldn't have argued with that, but the Rangers don't do that.
Correct. And that's part of the issue when it comes from an organizational perspective, how they manage prospects and how prospects end up not necessarily reaching their tier that they should be based upon being in the system. The only guy who have is maybe Chris Kreider. And he also got tough love. Kreider got scratched. Kreider got pushed down.
Oh, yeah.
Kreider ended up on the third line. So it wasn't a linear growth for Kreider either.
Well, I doubt this is in the mind of a Gallant, but I look at the the structure of the Rangers here, and Hedl, RFA, Lafrenière, Kraftstoff, RFA, Keandre Miller, RFA. They can't afford to re-sign all four of those players.
They could if they want to.
Remember, it depends on what kind of look. The benefit, and I put this in air quotes, of them not producing at the level you'd like them to might keep their contract value down the road. Right. The guy who's raising his value, there's two guys who are both raising their value. Hedl has raised his value substantively. He did it in the playoffs. If he can stay healthy, given what we've seen he has. And Keandre Miller, after a rough beginning to the season, his last 15 to 20 games has been the Miller we saw last year in the playoffs.
Yeah, we talked about him. Yeah,
he's been good. And there's no question his value has arisen. He's probably been their best overall defenseman the last quarter.
But he's still not putting up tons of points, and that does keep his value down.
But that's not his game, right? And
but that's when you're negotiating, though.
Right. Yeah, you might be able to get him on a bridge deal in the twos.
The only part of this, Jan, that's scary is, let's say Kravtsov ends the year with 6-7 goals, barely used in the playoff. They offer him a cheap bridge deal. He can just walk away and go back to Russia.
Yeah,
correct. Correct. I agree with you. I mean, look, Hedl's an RFA, Lafreniere's an RFA, Kravtsov's an RFA, Miller's an RFA. Those three guys. Kakko's under contract for one more year before he becomes an RFA.
Right.
So the 2 year,
and he does have to prove something too.
The 2 year, $4.2 million deal they signed him to is probably could be used as a baseline to a certain extent of what you might try to get Lafrenière at with a slight uptick. I think Hedl is going to be a lot more pricey to be able to sign, and Miller is going to be substantively pricier to get him to sign. I think Miller, you're probably looking at a minimum, if you do bridge, in the $4 million a year range is probably what you're looking at.
Yeah, he's getting 4. He's a top 4 defenseman. He's getting 4.
And remember, Hedl's 2 years away from UFA, so he might sign only a 1-year deal.
Sure.
And then if you're signing him to a 1-year deal, it's probably in the $3.5 to $4 million range. So, yeah, they've got some decisions, and
the cap not rising. The cap not rising to the level that we all would hope it would. Has again. Look, $1 million is going to hurt a lot of teams. It did this year. I mean, you have teams who couldn't field full teams because they had no cap room to be able to do it, right? And there's a lot of stuff that's been written about suggestions, right? Do you maybe have a taxi squad in the minors of guys you can call up if necessary to be able to fill that gap if you can't fill a full team? I mean, they've never gone ironically enough, even though Bettman came from the NBA, they've never got the bird rights, right? You can kind of extend your own free agents to a certain contract. Do you have a softer cap like the NFL does, or a luxury cap to be able to do it? And all these are ideas that have never been fully explored for some reason.
And they won't unless the players give up something. And that the thing is, and I know this well because of what the Leafs have done in their cap calisthenics, as I call them. You can call up if you're up against the cap, anybody who's making $800,000 or less, you can call them on emergency recall and it won't count against the cap. So that's how they justify calling up a guy like Jordy Ben or Victor Mete when they're right up against it. So they haven't had to do that this year because Muzzin got hurt and he's on LTIR and they had the room. But had he not been hurt, if all of a sudden 3 guys got COVID or everybody got the flu, that's the only way they'd be able to call up people because they had no cap space. So that's the way around it. And I don't see it changing for the balance of the CBA. I agree with the taxi squad or a Larry Bird exception or something, or even a compliance buyout. But the owners,
they won't do the buyout like that. I can tell you that's
the issue. Obviously, is the escrow, right? It's the payback of the escrow, which is largely based upon what kind of revenue you're bringing in. The hope is, if the revenue somehow continues to rise, right? And I'm a little surprised that the TV contracts that were signed haven't played a bigger part in terms of raising the cap because that's free money to a certain extent.
Yeah, they really haven't done nothing as far as that.
They had so much money to make up. Jan,
that's what it was.
That's with all the
from
money,
the pandemic for what they lost,
for all the money that they're making. I think the figure was that they say they're going to make like $6.5 billion or something like that. After that, even after the 50-50 split, they still the players still owe the owner $70 million. So just imagine it had to be $400-500 million in terms of an escrow difference that they had to pay out.
Name me another sport where the players have an escrow.
Oh, that's the fault of the Players Association.
Yeah, but I mean, again, would you rather have an escrow or unguaranteed contracts? Like, I mean, there's,
Right. And to answer Funky's chat room question, do I think Lafrenière deserves a big raise? No, but if you went from 9.25 to, let's say, $2 million a year, I don't consider that a big raise.
Right, but I think that's fair.
Kind of in range of market-esque value at the time, which I think the Rangers would be.
Listen, he's got Pat Brisson as an agent. He's not going to accept crumbs.
Right.
And you know what? Both sides in that instance may not want a long-term deal because, hey, he's coming off a below-average year. Do you think, if he signs a 5 or 6 year contract, the most he's going to get probably is like $3.5 to $4 million. He wants to be able to set his mark in a bridge deal.
Yeah, I'm worried he's going to be a cap casualty or be traded. I'm worried, and either way, he'll be traded.
The only benefit is that the dead cap space that the Rangers have on the books of $3.6 million clears up this year, right? So that actually helps a little bit. Sammy Blaze, $1.5 million. There's a door. Thank you for playing. We'll see you sometime else, right? That will help a little bit as well. Not a substantive amount, but right there, you're looking at about $5 million of cap room freed up generically.
Right.
But they'll need a defenseman, and they're going to spend money on a defenseman.
Right. And again, that's why I'm saying is you're probably not going to bring in a guy as a sixth defenseman at the deadline with any term left because you just can't afford to bring in a guy with a lot of term left.
Hi, Chuck. What do you want for Justin Braun?
No, they won't do that.
Bye.
Kidding. Okay.
No, it's hi, JD. I know we've basically kicked you to the curb, but we'd really love a nice deal for Gavrikov. What can you do for us?
Yeah, he's not going to go there either.
Yeah, no.
Gavrikov will go somewhere, but they're going to get a nice deal for him,
and they should.
I can just see Gavrikov going.
I told you it's going to be. I think it's going to be Dmitry Kulikov is the guy I think is going to end up with the Rangers.
Yeah, I'm okay. When you say Kulikov, I agreed with you. I was like,
no, that makes sense. But okay, great show, guys. We'll be back next year for another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Jan Levine, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.